Good morning, everybody. This is going to be a rather unusual interview. I've never done this before. I decided to do this on the beach with a specific gentleman who I met on the beach last Friday. And I hope this is all working well and I'm in the camera. Last Friday I went for a walk with my daughter Mimi, and we walked somewhere around here and met this lovely gentleman as we were looking at a big fat jellyfish swimming in the water, and he struck up a conversation with us. And I was quite inspired and motivated by his story. And so I brought him here to you because you do all know that I love meeting new people and people that have stories to tell. It's all good and well on TED's Talk, and I love TED's Talk, so all of you should actually access them if you feel like being motivated. But I love even more when it's just a very, people that you meet on the street, us, people just like us that have a story to tell and a message to give. So welcome, Robert.
Good morning. Very nice to see you.
Lovely to see you again too. When I met Robert, he told me how he comes every morning at 6 o'clock to the beach for a swim. And the first thing I thought was, that's awesome, and what motivates you? So I asked him, what motivates you? And I'd like him to share that message with you today.
Thank you very much. The motivation was initially difficult. Years ago I used to swim in the sea with a group of people very early in the morning, and then my life got in front of it, and then I became quite ill, and I felt I became a patient. I took on the role of a patient, and what was missing physically I applied mentally. So I ended up, after 3 or 4 years of various operations on my heart, in hospital over Christmas, and I had every test under the sun, and other than my heart, every other component was good. Every other component was good, and I decided on the first of the first 18 that I would become fit. How I was going to do that, I had no idea, but I decided that I would go for a swim every morning and a long walk, and I contemplated that for a few weeks, and then got sick of contemplation and actually did it. And obviously the first couple of mornings were very testing, but invigorating. I loved it, and I suddenly decided I'm going to do the things I love. And that's not the primary motivation. Life is the primary motivation, and I think I had denied myself a lot of life in that mindset that I was in.
That's really awesome, and go you, fantastic. So tell me a bit more about that mindset. That how is it possible, some might ask, that your mind will control your body? So you say it's your mindset that led you to ill health. What was that about?
My mindset, I think part self-diagnosis, part professional diagnosis. I also had a family in the process, but I don't think I was ever in touch with myself. I really was a product of the old school, pull your socks up and get on with it, don't complain, everything will be fine or not, but that's your lot, or my lot. So I think subconsciously I was always in that set, but I was frustrated or angry or, yes, that'll do, because I knew deep down inside there was something that was profoundly missing, which was probably me. So as this increased and my denial got bigger, I went through several serious trials, some self-indulgent, some not, until I became very ill, and I was diagnosed with all sorts of heart problems. And I thought, that is proof. That proves that I'm sick, physically sick. And that was the beginning of the cave.
Of the cave, wow. So you speak about your past mindset and how you grew up, and that was dictating the results that you were getting at the time. How did you go about changing that? And you speak,
well,
yes, go on, an answer.
Someone once said, be careful what you say, it might be the truth. What I'm trying to say is that I didn't realise that I was always told that my mind is a muscle, use it, but I never ever exercised it. I exercised it intellectually and thought that was sufficient. What a clever chap I am. But it's a very stupid person that I became because I ignored life's forces and tried to mould them, this is like hindsight talking, into what I thought was a caricature of me, which was good enough. And sickness, illness and bad food, not sleeping, all that sort of stuff could be swept under the it's okay carpet. But the carpet bulges after a while and then explodes. And that's more or less what happened to me. So as far as mindset is concerned, I had very strong willpower, but mindset's got nothing to do with willpower. Willpower turned me into a professional patient because I identified and probably was happy to explain to people I can't do this and I can't do that and I'm sick. And so I had a narrative with my, not imagined illness, with my illness. But I never took control, confronted. I never sat with my illnesses and said, okay, first, and went through them one by one by one. Never did it. And that, I had to expel the sensitivities that I developed and become confrontational, not assertive, confrontational with my illnesses. And if they were real, my heart, of course, it needs to be operated on or needed to, so that was real. But a lot of other things. My depression was all-encompassing at the time I was in depression. And I decided I would confront depression. And it's difficult, and a lot of people say that they have clinical advice that they're depressed. I had all that sort of stuff, but I was sick of it. And I couldn't see a life ahead, whatever years I have, of living exactly the same. Whether I was living in a desert island, which was bliss, or whether I was down a well, it made no difference. No difference. The landscape was the same. It was like being in the bottom of a swimming pool, covered with grey cloud, and there was just no concept of getting out. Well, I can say for one that I can get out, and it's up to me every day. It's like eating, it's like drinking, and it's like physical health. It's something that I can do. My body's attuned to it, but if I deny it and neglect it, it won't happen.
I love that message. That really is amazing. So, you talk about having depression and then you say, but it's something I can do to not have it. So depression is indeed something that we do and not something that we have. How do you feel about that?
Well, 12 months ago I would have been I would have been strong in my arguments to say that that's not true, because I wasn't at the place where I wanted to do anything about it. I was quite prepared to put on the clothes of a depressed person, like an actor. I'm in a Shakespearean play. I'm playing Hamlet, so I dress up like Hamlet and suddenly become him to do the job properly. Well, unfortunately, depression with me was as much as that, or more than that, as anything else that contributed to it. I mean, there are a lot of sad events in my life, but starting from when I was very young, very tragic events. But it's pointless for me to relive them, because nothing will change except how I view the past. It's like being in a country that you visited 50 years ago, that I visited 50 years ago. I remember it, I know what's going on, but that's a memory. And I can exaggerate it and inflate it, or I can just say that's another memory of millions that I have. So I choose to do that.
That's awesome, awesome. And when we talk about our past, obviously it's you carried stuff from childhood that told you stories, gave you messages, but it sounds to me like you've decided to take, certain messages and say, well, I choose something different. I choose to think something different about those stories,
Correct. I think it's a,
You keep talking.
I think it's a cultural imprint. I think it's a cultural imprint, and it's we all. I mean, I like anybody. I like most people. Wanted to fit into society. I wanted to be part of it, so I performed how I thought society wanted people to be treated, and I fulfilled the role of being another person, really. And I found it very difficult to personalise, and more so because the currency of conversation in the groups that I mixed with tended to be other people's business, and I didn't know how to. I felt hurt if people were mean to me, but not much if I was mean to others, and the imbalance was not good. I have a fractious relationship with my three elder sons, and that's got a lot to do with my fixed views, my then fixed views. And of course they're allowed to have fixed views, and they're men, and I always thought of them as young men, and they're actually quite old. They are mature, and I don't think I ever treated them as adults, which is, what can you do? But I'm sure other people will say you're logically do, but the issue is that every day is a gift. I look upon every day as a gift. I learn something every day. I read a lot. I listen to soothing music. I don't spend a lot of time in my head. If I feel that I'm having conversations with myself, I sack the other voice, get rid of it.
Nice. How do you do that?
How do I do that? Well, I close it down as best I can. I withdraw my attention. I withdraw my hearing. I think about something else entirely, whatever that might be. Looking out the window of a train or a tram or whatever.
And do you find that gets easier to do with time? Because in the beginning, I'm sure it wasn't as simple as...
Not as simple. No. The early part of it has got really not a lot to do with, as I said, willpower has got nothing to do with it. It's a matter of, I suddenly became aware that I was carrying on my back and in my arms and in my body vast amounts of surplus baggage that why did I have it? I don't know. To protect me. I wanted to remember this stuff. I needed it. It was important that I drag this rubbish around. And then, as I said earlier, as I start to confront this stuff, what's in this package? What's in this package? What's in this package? Why am I carrying this stuff around? Most of the packages have vanished. And the ones that were still there, when I opened them up, were either empty or they had some hideous fabrication, some myth that couldn't stand examination. I'd either fabricated it, I'd either magnified it, I'd either blown it out of all proportions. It wasn't true, and to confront it's not true about myself was probably the hardest thing. Knowing that I had to be physical and healthy and be alert, which produced all the good things, all the right things for me. I knew. Did I do it? No. And even if I did it occasionally, I wasn't in the right frame of mind. I didn't enjoy the minute of jumping in the water. I didn't enjoy the minute sitting on the sand as I am now, talking to my interviewer, very nice interviewer. But it's like becoming a child. That's all I can say to you. And children are inquisitive. They taste things. They don't need parents with a stick behind them, or they don't need parents saying you're going to be a philosopher or a musician when you grow up. They just, they put it out of their mind and they go off. Well, the parent is a bit like the other voice in the head. And my parents, sadly, have passed. But it's very easy for their voices to be in my head giving me instructions. And that's something that I'm at work letting go of. letting go. It's not willpower, it's the reverse of willpower. It's relaxing. Get rid of it. It'll all float away. The more I apply willpower, the more I lock it up.
You have just given so much gold and so much value in what you've said that I'm just thinking of where do I even begin to tap into that. That was amazing. Yes, a lot of people say I don't have the willpower, whether it's about their health, being exercise and food, or whether it's about I don't have the willpower to apply myself to study or to change that thing that I've always wanted to change, whether it is being mean to people, talking about people, and they decide, no, I'm not going to do that, and then somehow succumb. And I think that understanding that it's not about willpower, it's about awareness and consciousness, and looking at, you know, you told us how you looked at your past and you unpacked all that baggage that we carry around. Everybody has baggage, some more, some less. And the fact is that when we deny it, when we don't look at it, at least enough to say, well, do I want to carry this? It's pretty heavy, you know. At the same time as it's heavy and you recognise it's holding you back, I think what you've shared with us, that there are gifts in there too. Things that you look at, you go, well, do I want to keep that? Is it serving me? Because if you're doing it, it's serving you. And looking at how is it serving you? Is it serving you in, for example, I'll ask you then, there were certain things that you were carrying that had served you till now. You didn't do this when you were 20. You're doing this in these years now that you're able to experience that shift for yourself, to release that baggage. Yes. That's awesome.
Well, certain questions have no answers, and that's one of them. One of the things that I've unpacked is being an authority on everything. I've decided I'm an authority on nothing. So I never give advice to anybody, even my children. I make suggestions, or I say to them, what would you do? Very simple. And they suddenly, their mouths drop. Dad's saying, what do I do? This is how you do maths, this is how you do, this is how you finish your university course. It's all rubbish. What am I trying to do? Live their life? What a dreadful thing. To live someone else's life for them. That's shocking. That's a crime that people should be locked up for. But money.
I'm thinking all these parents are going,
well, I have read a lot, and one of the prime features of being human is to struggle. Doesn't matter who you are or what you are. There are periods of your life, or could be every day, that there is a genuine struggle. Physical struggle, mental struggle, cultural struggle, all struggle. And that produces anxiety, and that produces sadness. And that's the 1 and 1 equals 2. It happens, it's real and it's physical. It can't be turned into it doesn't really happen, because that's what mind-altering drugs are for. I don't take mind-altering drugs. There are brief periods in our either short or long lives that are studded with bright moments, and it's recognising those bright moments, and not all the nonsense and rubbish and shocking stuff that tends to fill our life, even if it's boring. Or more tragic is the mythology, making a myth out of the past. It's ridiculous, and I did it. So
And it's interesting, you say two things there, but what you focus on is what you get. So as you focus on the more positive things in life, it brightens your day, it brightens your life. And then you follow through with the myth. That's right, the myth that you mentioned, that you believe certain things about your past. It's a story you told yourself, that this happened, therefore I am this, or I'm not good enough, or bad things happen. Whatever message you took out of there, you're saying, well, why don't you look at it, unpack it, and say, is this a myth, is this the truth?
It's a bit like at school, and for the first time you're exposed to Ulysses, or the Iliad, the supposed Homer. Now, some people actually, and we were students, I thought it was all real. these people were doing these things, and this was a sort of a commentary on what people had done. It was all made up, and it could have had a bit of local colour thrown in. A whole lot of people wrote it, or one person. So my narrative is exactly the same. There is a lot of myth that needs to be examined, and that goes to I can't do. I can't do this, I can't do that. Why can't you? Oh, because it's too dangerous or rubbish. It goes back to this business. It might sound difficult, but if I can do it, I promise you it's not. Of confronting and then forensically auditing, examining, pulling to pieces these things. It's like a bully. A person stands over you with his arms folded or her arms folded and yells and screams at you. Well, most people object to that and are fearful or want to fight. The issue is what is actually in front of you, and most times it's just a very loud voice and not much else. And same with memories. I have a lot of things I regret, but I did them, I own them, and they won't change. You know, people can ascribe all sorts of attitudes to that. Well, I can't. I barely manage to think for myself. I cannot think for other people.
I really love that message too, how many a time, and again, there's no judgment here, it's what I have done, what other people do. We tell our children how to be. Now, when I try it now with my daughter Mimi, and you met her, she's a strong-minded one, and actually she has a mother who's a coach. She coaches me back and says, I can think for myself and don't tell me. I didn't ask for your advice. And she says it a little differently and a bit more politely. But the fact of the matter is she's absolutely correct. You know, when they're 2 and 3, we guide them, and as they grow, we're supposed to allow them and give them faith and trust in themselves, whether they're going to make a mistake or not. Let me tell you, this doesn't change when you're 50, 60 or 70. Your kids still come to you to talk and tell you of themselves. And the instinct for someone who's grown up perhaps like myself is to want to help them, to want to pick them up, to give them our wisdom. But what wisdom do we actually have? We're not living their lives, so how on earth are we supposed to decide for them? So those of us that perhaps taking a message from you, when our kids come to us, the trick, I think, is to allow them to feel trust to make that decision themselves. That's what they really, really want from us. Perhaps to give them some pearls of our experience in an open fashion that's not telling them what to do. What do you think of that?
Age has nothing to... I agree with you, 100%. Age has nothing to do with wisdom. A 6-year-old or a 7-year-old may have a better insight into life than a 70-year-old. Because often given children are allowed to actually experience things other than their house or their car, go for a walk in the park, have thoughts, all that sort of stuff.
Imagination.
Yeah. Well, they're allowed to develop imagination. They look at something and imagine it. Read a book and, I could be like that, or what would it be like? And by and large, children, I think, want to know, why is this so? What the hell is going on? Why am I here? That existentialism comes later when they're 15 and 16, everything is an argument run. But, and you see, I think again, I use the word tragedy. One of the Walter Benjamin wrote a very interesting book on tragedy. Anyway, one of the tragedies is that children are closed off and or closed down. Why should I be enthusiastic if everyone in this house is telling me what to do? Clunk. And then there's the other side of the coin, that there's the vicariousness. My parents want to live their lives through me. Shocker. Or there's the parents or the brother or sister or whoever, grandparents who are indifferent. Doesn't matter what you do, they won't make a comment. And that's the worst thing that can possibly happen. So it's not. If anyone is in a position to do anything It's to spend time with themselves, wrapping their arms around themselves and saying, I actually am a pretty good person. Culturally, I've acquired the habit of saying I'm not, or culturally I've acquired the habit of saying I'm an absolute genius and I can solve every problem just as bad, but I'm not a bad person. And from that, I don't know the answer to many things, but I will certainly sit and examine the stuff that's been brought around, carried around, how I perceive myself in the world. Not deep, not philosophy 101, but basically a person looking at their own life through their own eyes. And no one can do that other than themselves. And there are times when it's very teary, and all my advice is, I don't give advice. My suggestion is...
Well, you're here to share.
I'm sharing, correct. Is to go with it. And be independent. You might live in a big family with lots of people, or in a small family, or on your own. You can be just as tied up in this stuff, living on your own, as you can in a big family. Be independent and give your family their independence as much as you have your own.
Once again, so much gold. Thanks for that, Robert. In fact, Robert could come along to, those of you that have been to my workshops, may have recognised some of the messages that Robert just gave us of, when we're born with so much, with creativity, spontaneity, curiosity, courage, vulnerability, all of those wonderful, wonderful traits. And this is not blame, because I'm a parent, so I've done this too, to my own, I'm sure, in some various ways. Some I can see, some probably I can't, where we shut that down, and the children do learn to cater to us, because it's all about trying to please the parents. Of course they want to, as little children. That changes along the way, but our identity has been formed by us trying to please our parents in whatever way, whether the parents were abusive or whether they were over, without any boundaries. That's also creates a type of role that the child plays. And you've just described that beautifully, that it's time now as adults, no matter what our age, to reclaim what we were born with, what we truly are meant to be. And that's not about the stories that we told ourselves along the way. It's about looking at those stories and saying, well, what's real, what's true, and what's not, what's serving me and what's not.
Right. Letting go is the underlying message. Let your children go. I can't believe that people put birds in cages. I grew up on a farm early on, and I come to the city and people got birds in cages. I just think it's like watering a concrete drive. I don't get it, but such a waste. And letting go means that a lot of the stuff that we, like magnets, collect to us, we don't. And you don't have to capture something to have it. You let go of something and see what happens. If what happens is, I never want to see you again, well, that's how the person thinks. What can you do? Not a lot. But capturing them is not the answer. It's a recipe for unhappiness. And I don't want to be unhappy. I seriously mean I don't want to be unhappy. But there are certain events that happen every day in my life that I can make very challenging. They are mood changing, but they're not permanent mood changes. And another thing will come along, and if I let it, it will take its place. And that's what I'm experiencing as I sit on this beach talking.
That's awesome. Thank you, Robert. And the message that we started off with, one of how to be motivated, has shifted into just as worthy a message on letting our children grow up and the way they're supposed to and the way they've been gifted to by believing God, by God. And going back just a little bit to motivation, if you wouldn't mind. You get up in the morning, let's take the morning because so much of us find this a challenge, right?
Sure.
you have the opportunity perhaps to wake up a little early to go back to sleep or to actually get up. And you said that your motivation was, well, I don't choose ill health, I choose something else.
Yes.
So what about someone that says, yeah, I choose it, I just need that extra half hour in bed, and maybe I'll do it later, maybe I'll do it tomorrow. And we all do this at some point.
Of course, and I had a PhD in rolling over and going to sleep. It's not a big thing, it's an option. And if it's looked upon as a small thing, okay, I'll get up. No big deal. I'm trained to feel comfort when I wake up and want to go back to sleep. That's what I do every day. So it's like chopping trees down, or no, not chopping trees down, but sawing wood. If a person's trained to do that every day, they'll do it until something better comes along, or they're told, well, or shown there's other things to do. It's the same. It's not a big thing. It becomes a big thing when I make it a big thing. And motivation is, in my opinion, doing what I like. Why can't I go for a swim in the morning and enjoy it? Because I say I can't. Why do I say I can't? Because I've never done it before, or when I did, I was well, but I'm sick now. Well, that's rubbish. That's me. Nothing to do with anyone else. There are all sorts of reasons for individual behaviour. But doing something that might be getting up and going and putting the music on and reading a book or looking out the window is just as valuable, because if that's what a person loves. Taking the dog for a walk, finding out where the cat slept last night, all that stuff. But that's very important, because it goes to, I like doing this. And that's what goes back to what I said before. If I examine what I was doing, 1% is what I was doing that was in my best interests, and 99% was rubbish, nonsense, waste of time, not fulfilling, compounding my inverted commas depression. I did things because I was depressed, and I learnt depression very well, and I did depression every day, and depression said, don't get up in the morning, don't go for a swim, it'll be too cold, you won't like it, it's too dark. Where did that come from? It came out of my head, me telling me that it's not going to work, and it's nonsense. If I want to have a swim, I'm going to have a swim. And that's the difference from last year. Last year was, I was a believer. Depression is depression is depression. I can do nothing about it. Today, I don't know whether I can do anything about it. I don't feel nearly... And that's a lot to do with depression too, being self-obsessed. What can I get out of this world and not really think anything about anyone else? The sea is free. There it is. Sand is free. There it is. For the time being, in my lifetime of walking. I don't need anything other than to come down here and enjoy it and look across the various ships and the birds. I love it. And jumping in the water. There's a cathartic explosion when I go from being sort of asleep, that's why I get the tram down, because I don't want to drive down and crash, to be instantly awake, vitally awake. And that's the thing that carries me through the day until the next time. And I'll probably be just as obsessed about swimming as I was about being a patient. And I don't think that's a good thing either. But at the moment I'm loving it and enjoying it. And I do it because I want to do it, not because I have to do it. If I have to go and visit one of my children and miss out on the swim, I miss out on the swim. Because I know I'll do it tomorrow. It's not the whole thing's falling to pieces. Yeah, I'm feeling depressed today. All of a sudden, my life is ruined. I've got depression back. It's all over. I'm going to have depression for the rest of my life. No. It doesn't have to be like that.
It's an absolutist thinking, which is very childlike in many ways as well. And that's what we do to ourselves. So that's another wonderful message right there. Thank you, Robert. That was awesome. And talking about free choice, that's what you're saying. You get to choose. You know, some people say we don't have free choice. You have free choice at every moment. Am I going to get up or not get up? Am I going to choose something I love or choose something I'm comfortable with that keeps me safe? And you've obviously chosen a path that gives you a lot of satisfaction, a lot of help, and now you're sharing it with us. So thank you.
If I can,
Yes, please.
once I start, I've got to learn how to stop.
No, you don't. I'm
One of the ways that I became freer was looking at what my boundaries are and what I wanted my boundaries to be. And in the past I had no boundaries. People would come and go, they didn't care, well, because I didn't have a boundary. I now have boundaries. And if individuals in my life don't like those boundaries, see you later. If I have respect for myself, I should have respect for others. I've always thought I've had respect for other people, but I'm sure that was another myth, because I didn't perform respect. I caricatured respect. I performed the role of being respectful. I didn't feel it in my heart, because I didn't allow my heart to influence me. Well, all sorts of people. I wouldn't have met this wonderful lady if I was a standoffish, insular individual that I was even 6 months ago. It wouldn't have happened. And these are the things that happen, big or small, and we make what is big and we make what is small. They're all events that contribute to our own personal experience. And doing the same thing every day is like Sisyphus pushing a rock up the hill, and then it rolls down, and the next day he's got to push it up again, forever. And although I'm sure an imaginative mind could think up something new every day, not many of us are born with that gift. So get rid of the rock, get rid of the hill, and just be free. Freer. You don't have to be free as in my day with hippies and flowers and running around and smoking dope and all that sort of stuff. That's enslavement, because it's a caricature for life. It's if I decide to do that and I really want to do it, I'll do it. But I'm not going to be heavily influenced by others. And that's another topic about our modern world, and I'm not going there.
You have given us amazing value. Even speaking about boundaries, it's part of my workshop as well, because I think very often, particularly in the community that I belong to, it's hard to know what our boundaries are, given that we grow up being told to not have them, really, to do everything for everybody all the time, and then you grow up and you realise that that's hurting, and it can be unresourceful. It can be resourceful as well, but knowing your boundaries and coming from that place, you can give even more, and that's something you've just shared with us. So thanks a lot. Is there another parting message that you'd love to give to us before we conclude?
Well, you've been very tolerant in listening to me, and it's a very hackneyed expression, and people reject it. I reject it. Full on reject. Slam the door on it is love. It could be a Christian or religious version of love. It could be any other form of love. It's not, as all of my teenage sons, all of my sons have gone through, and I went through it too, physical love or mental love. It goes to, I like myself. And if you can make I like myself, I love myself. Not as in the olden days we used to say he loves himself because he's got a big ego. But I actually do like myself. Warts and all, I like myself. And that's a big thing, because I could never say that. Never say that. And I'm not there yet, but having the boundaries and being in the moment, having this interview, I'm listening to what's being said, and I take an interest in the discussion. I'm not performing. This is me. I don't know anything else. But a year ago, it would have been a different story. What does this person want? What do they expect? What do I think I'm supposed to do? Everything's complicated. It's not complicated. If I take people on face value and I end up being swindled or hurt, it's a learning experience. I just have to learn about that. It's not the end of the world. It's just a learning experience. And most people don't do that. So I'm happy to take the average of humanity and say most people are kind, most people are good. We don't have to identify humanity by exception. I've met some really rotten people, therefore everything's rotten, I've got to be on guard. No. That's
another myth.
That's a burden that I'm not prepared to carry anymore. If I'm exposed and people want to take advantage of me or whatever, good luck. But having boundaries tends not for that not to happen. If a person doesn't respect me, then I don't want much to do with them.
That's right.
I don't have to disrespect them. They're human beings. They can get on with their life, but not with me around.
That's awesome. And that message of self-love is one I've shared many, many times. Again, it's challenged by the way we grow up to love others, and people forget that the message is love others as you love yourself, which has to come first.
Absolutely right.
And you love others better once you love yourself, as you so eloquently put today.
It's learning through experience is underrated. Learning through a formal process is overrated. Both important, but the weight should be better placed.
Well, I can say that it didn't feel like an interview today too much because I got carried away listening to you, thinking I love the messages, I love all the sharing and the learning that you've done. And might I say that 6 months, 1 year is such a snapshot of your life. And so for those that say it takes a long time to change my habits, it's an instant. It's the decision that you make in that moment that you really and truly are going to do this because you've had enough of that old way. When you tip that balance of wanting something enough, that's where it all begins, and from there it can only roll at a speed that you choose. So thank you, Robert. It was amazing and a pleasure and an honour to meet somebody like yourself. Thank you.
That goes to the message of taking life on. This wouldn't have happened if it had been, as I said, 6 months ago. And this is a wonderful experience. I mean, who wouldn't want to have this experience? Well, 6 months ago and for years, I wouldn't. And then maybe I was bitter and twisted. Why don't I do things like that? Well, the answer to that question is because I wouldn't let myself.
Awesome message. Awesome message.
Thank
With that, we leave you to have a wonderful, wonderful day. See you later. In
Bye.
Hebrew, it's shalom.
Shalom.
Shalom.